Okay, call the meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That's my notification, it's 9 o'clock.
Welcome, everyone. Are there any additions to the agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I do have a couple here. On the consent agenda, item number 2, Commissioners' Warrants, we have an additional add-on for Commissioners' Warrants this morning of $12,091.68. $12,091.68. And at 11:30 p.m., we're going to delete Joyce Smith for County Assessor Budget Review. We'll reschedule her for a different date. She has some issues she needs to deal with the budget. And we will have one personnel item. And then one item as far as the Commissioner's vouchers list goes on, we will have a change on page 3 of the 819 list to AVI Systems. That will be paid out of the ARP funds out of the 003 account for $5231.97. It's just got miscoded, so that needs to go to ARP. So that's
Mr. Chair, with those adjustments, I'll move.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Approve the consent agenda. Approve the minutes of 8/9/22. Approve the commissioner warrants and add-on warrants from today of $12,091.68. Approve the auditor warrants for 8/12 and 8/19 of 22, and approve the hospital warrants for $603,866.52.
Mr. Chair, I'd move for approval. Support that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Kyle. You have some information for us.
Yes, I hope I do. Thank you, Chairman, Commissioners, Administration for the invitation. I think you have a packet here with a little bit of a slide deck, if you would. I'll talk a little bit about Hometown Fiber and what we can do for broadband for Pipestone County. First of all, we put together a strategic partnership to handle broadband because it's a little bit bigger than Hometown Fiber alone. So we've partnered with Bolton and Mink to help us with engineering and some of the permitting and some of the environmental assessments that need to happen. We also work with Ellers, Rebecca I forget her last name, Kurtz with Ellers, and she helps us with the bonding and any kind of municipal financing that might have to happen as it relates to broadband. Sorry, Rebecca, if you watch this. So part of the broadband challenges that are facing us here on slide 4, there's a few things we say at Hometown Fiber, and that is, if it's not reliable, it's not valuable. And really what we mean by that is a lot of the criteria for broadband improvements are based on speed. But we look at a lot of different things, reliability being one of them. You can have all the speed in the world, but if it's not reliable, what's it worth to you? There are other elements that fall into that category of criteria for market demand. One of them being speed, reliability. Another one is affordability. So getting it available to folks is obviously a big challenge, but getting it in a way that's affordable, reliable, and meets market demand for speed are all kind of what makes market demand, even though a lot of the grants are just focused on speed. Another thing we look at here, ongoing government subsidies are not a long-term answer. One of the concerns we have is in the race to get things done real fast, we're missing the point that it has to be economically sustainable. So there's not a constant requirement for ongoing subsidies. And that is difficult, but possible if you're dealing with some of the more rural communities. And then if the government is being asked to fund broadband infrastructure construction, but then only allowing a single provider to use it, It's similar to having a community build a road and then only allowing FedEx trucks to drive on it. So we're saying, why fund an information highway that limits consumer choice? We're a big fan of choice. We favor choice drives innovation, choice drives price, choice increases customer service. And so we're a big fan of having the community build the information highway and then let multiple providers provide services on it. So on page 5, we talk a little bit here about government standards, which are really focused right now on speed. The next round of grant money that's coming out from the NTIA, it's called BEAD. The states are applying for that directly, but in the BEAD grant under construction, there's some language that has to do with making it open source for multiple providers, making it economically sustainable and things like that. So they are moving a little bit out of just speed requirements, but right now we're still in the speed requirement. And so things are kind of going in fast and cheap. The internet services business model, I mean, they're a private company, they have to make money. It's very difficult for them to provide services to rural communities in most of their business models. And so they go back to the fast and cheap model, which requires high maintenance long term. And then there's the implementation. Again, it's the fast and cheap version. So we're trying to bring back into the construction not only the accountability, but getting it so that it's built as critical infrastructure. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. So right now I'm on page 6, and the traditional technical approach for fiber is a term you've probably heard at some point or another called PON. Stands for passive optical networking. Some people refer to it as GPON or gigabit passive optical networking. There's a variety of ways you can do PON, but basically what it's doing is splitting fiber optic from their central offices multiple times until it reaches communities. A common field split is 32 times, but the switchgear can handle up to 128 splits, which is getting more and more common. I've seen it go as high as 640, not very successfully, but I've seen it tried. So, what that does though is it builds bottlenecks into the fiber infrastructure, and that's going to put a real tight clock on when that infrastructure has to be tore up and dug up again. It allows only for one ISP to use that infrastructure, because if you're splitting it, you can't have other people using it. It's not built as critical infrastructure, and it ends up just sort of kicking the can down the road a little bit. So what we came up with was a technical and a economic model that we hope solves this problem. And we're different on that, and let's jump to page 9. I'll show you how. When you build it, we set up a scenario for multiple internet providers to compete. We're going to meet the market demand, not just the speed requirements, but all of market demand, which includes customer service, reliability, affordability for decades. The funds stay in the community. We believe this is a community investment into the infrastructure, and so there are lease fees that the ISPs pay to the users of the network that go back to the communities. And then one of the other benefits of directly connected is the private secure municipal network. And what that means is if you have a wastewater system or a water system, we can connect all of those nodes of that network back directly to like the wastewater plant or the water plant, so that it's not using anything public, because those networks are fairly vulnerable to hacking. And in this way, we can shore it up much tighter so that the nodes that are vulnerable are directly connected. Also brings a great deal of reliability to those operations. So on page 10, we look at it from a community perspective, and what that means is we're looking at it from other projects. If there's a road project or a bridge project or a water project or something going on in your county, we'd like to combine that in with some infrastructure so that you can save money long term. Reliability and longevity, like I talked about with critical infrastructure, the end of government subsidies, and fixing the internet problem for good. So on page 11, this is how we do it. The technical difference is that we directly connect every property with fiber. It's not split. It goes right from the central office to every parcel. And there's no sharing of the fiber. And by doing that, we can have multiple internet providers house their head-end equipment in our facilities, and the consumer can then choose whatever ISP is available there to them. We build it as critical infrastructure, so we don't want to have a lot of downtime and a lot of maintenance issues. So that requires a slightly different architecture that we implement from day one. No disruptions when are updated, so we remove that clock of 10 to 15 years before you got to dig it up again. And all we have for upgrades is you replace the electronics on each side of the fiber. So if later on the speed requirements of the market are greater, you just replace the components on each end. Now in the economic model, which is a really big part of this working, in addition to the maintenance that's required for accidental cutoffs or different kinds of maintenance on the physical infrastructure that's required, we have built in there a 5-year replacement plan for all the electronics. Because as we know, technology moves pretty fast, and if you're sitting there with obsolete equipment that becomes unreliable or doesn't have the speed and you don't have any economic ability to replace that, you're kind of right back where you started. So that's a requirement that we have of operating on the network, is that those funds are available. So when it's time to upgrade, there's funds there to upgrade it. And then of course we talked about the municipal data security. So on page 12, we talk about the financing here a little bit. We help counties apply for state and federal grants where applicable. The RDOF program, I think you guys are familiar with, but I don't think it affected Pipestone. The BEAD grants that we talked about, they're the next round of federal money that's coming out right now. The state has received $100 million for the design and the sort of sorting everything out. And then they're putting an application together on how they're going to use that money right now to the feds. And then the next round is expected to be about $47 billion that comes out for the states to use for broadband construction, and that's what we're trying to get people lined up to do for the next funding rounds. And then of course there's the U.S. Department of Agriculture. A lot of water and different projects come out of their funds. They have some fast track broadband stuff that makes the application process a little bit less intensive than a typical USDA grant, but we can help with all that grant writing. The state, that deadline is passed. We've already put the applications in for this latest round of border-to-border stuff. And then some counties have put together grant programs for ISPs to apply, and we've helped counties write those programs. And most of our value on the county side when we're talking about single ISP solutions has to do with, well, we received this application from ISP A, B, and C, but we have no idea what they're saying or what it means, and so we can help with an overview of those and help grade those and sort out, if they look good or if they're priced appropriately or just what. So we've helped some counties with that too. So on page 14, we talk about the bond programs. Again, a lot of this stuff, there's a certain amount of grant money that's required from the communities or the county to put up on their own to qualify for the grant money. If you decide to bond, we use the network earnings to pay down the bond and the debt and make bond payments, so there's not a general tax increase. It would be a user fee, just like you would with a water or wastewater type system. And that way you can keep some of that money in your community, because we anticipate the funds coming back to be greater than the obligation owed. And so you guys can kind of set the rate on that. So page 15, 16, next step. And that kind of gets into the proposal that's before you. We want to give everybody enough information to make an informed, confident decision and kind of get rid of all of the what ifs and what nots that exist in broadband. And part of what we do is we go out and map the areas. We found that the FCC maps and a lot of the maps that are created now have some inaccuracy in them. And when we dug into it a little further to figure out why there was inaccuracy in them, we realize that the FCC is asking the ISPs to provide this information. And in many cases, the ISPs are bought and sold frequently. And so there's not a lot of real accurate documentation in those scenarios. So there's a room for error there. But another more compelling reason, and if you try to put yourself in the ISP's position, you're supposed to give up proprietary information of how you're competing in certain marketplaces when you've got a competitor knocking on your door. So there's a point where you'd say, I don't think I want to disclose that information. That's a very reasonable thing. So a lot of that happens too. So sometimes it's over-reported, sometimes it's under-reported, but there isn't a lot of oversight on that. So what we do to fix that is we go out in the field and we drive all the roads and find out what's actually there, who owns it, and what its capacity is. And we put together a map that grades each parcel that says, hey, this is here, there, and everywhere else. But what we're really looking for primarily are the bottlenecks for the existing infrastructure, because sometimes it's not a matter of rebuilding everything. Sometimes it's a matter of just fixing one little problem, and then the community that is in that area gets served again. And so we identify all that and report that back. So we're hoping that with that process that we're able to use the monies available wisely. And so our services on page 17 start out with consulting, which is that evaluation, design, and cost estimating that I was talking about. In our design and cost estimation, we usually break it down by local governance. So we'll break it down by town and township so that each town and township, and you can see where it would cost to develop each area. And then depending on which projects get approved, we go through the grant and bonding process. Once the financing is secured, we would go through a typical engineering process, do a bid host, and then get our contractors to construct it, do the construction oversight, and then Hometown Fiber can come in and operate the network at whatever capacity you need. Some communities want to operate it themselves, like if they have an electric utility or are familiar with operating things of that nature. They may just need some training and some specialized skill sets that we can help them obtain, and then we can be there for their higher level support. When they get bound up, they can call us for help. Other people just want us to run the whole thing and not have anything to do with it. So we've been in all of these scenarios, so. And then that's it. Page 18 is the contact information. Like I said, the next steps for us working with Pipestone really have to do with the proposal and our scope that we've put together there. And at this point, I'd just open it up for questions.
Obviously, the biggest question always is going to be what impact will it have on the taxpayers? So you said that the grants and so forth, that there's a match, or so any idea what kind of dollars we're talking about?
Yeah, traditionally, there's been about a 30% grant. You score the best on the grants if you only ask for about 30%, right? If you can always ask for more, but then your scoring goes down on your grants, and there's always more demand than money. So that's how it's been traditionally. Now, I don't know exactly how the BEAD program is going to roll out, but right now they recognize that getting to those more rural areas hasn't been happening with what they've done before. Part of it is that if you're a township or a small town, it's very difficult for you to take on the idea of doing a federal grant application or even a state grant application, because there's so much requirements there that even the cost to apply is too much. So that's where we come in and kind of help with some of that on the smaller scales. But what we found is that that's where the county has the best role to help with these grant applications. But the BEAD program they're looking at a 90-10, meaning the grants will cover 90 and you only have to match 10, which is a huge game changer for being able to get out to the more rural areas. And then the state has a program that they just signed in May that has to do with extra funding for getting to those farther out locations. So if you have a farm or a property that's out quite a ways from a population center, there's some additional dollars available to reach those folks with wireline service. So they're starting to be more and more programs available. The problem that we've seen with that is that when they drop the program, there's usually just a few months or something to get everything together for your applications before the application deadline. So we're encouraging people to go through this process and get everything compiled and decisions made and be ready for these next rounds of applications.
So are you saying the 47 billion is the 10% program?
That's the way it's written now. It's hard to say how that will actually come out, but things have a tendency to move around a little bit. And yes, but we've been working closely with the FCC. We have a equity partner in DC that works with the FCC on a daily basis, and the NTIA it came from the Department of Commerce, went through the FCC, and is at the NTIA for the issuing. And we've been working really hard with the FCC to keep the economic viability portion alive in the grant. And the argument there is if you make it economically viable, you can put more money into it so that it actually can happen. Because they've been a little frustrated seeing that a lot of the money hasn't been making it to the intended locations thus far. So
Kyle, what does BEAD stand for?
I'm not sure what it stands for. I think the B is broadband, and then after that, I don't know.
Better Google it.
Yeah, better Google. I just refer to it as BEAD. I forget what the acronym is. My apologies for not knowing that. I should know that, right?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. Is the goal to get a hard line to everybody?
That's the goal.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
Not like LeSueur County had internet for all, and they got fiber between towers and then towers to devices. The reason for getting a line to everybody is speed.
It's reliability, speed, and affordability. We have a saying in house that the convenience of wireless requires wires. So if you think of your Wi-Fi access point, you need a wire plugged into it, And with the speed requirements that are coming and the market demand that's coming, wireless, obviously, everybody loves wireless. That's not going anywhere. But the size of the cells and the quantity of cell sites that are going to be required is massively more than what's there now. So you're going to start to see more and more communities doing microcell stuff along inside towns or inside homes for like 5G and other wireless stuff. So as wireless expands and the appetite for wireless expands, so does the need for wireline service everywhere. So they kind of go hand in hand,
Yeah.
One of the things we really like about the wireless internet service providers is that this affords them the ability to continue to operate their wireless networks if they want, but they can also provide service cost effectively on our networks on the if you build the road, so to speak. And the wireless internet providers have a really good reputation for being knowing the local community. They know the people, they know the area, they provide good customer service, but they're too small to really apply in many cases for some of these wireline grants. And we like to partner with them to bring them on board as well, so that they've been really left behind in a lot of this grant applications. They don't qualify because a lot of it's wireline only. And so we like to combine them so that people have a good mix of wireless and wired.
How do we justify spending the money on the rest of the county when a city like Edgerton is doing its own wiring right now?
Right?
This summer they're wiring everybody up to cable,
Yep.
fiber.
Well, that would be an area that you would say, well, maybe not spend the county resources there. They've already done it.
And no use for us competing with them, that company. They're spending a lot of money putting wires down right now.
I wouldn't look at it as you're competing with them. I would say you're opening it up so that they can efficiently provide services. There's no reason why, whether it's Midco or Arvig or any of the providers that are in this area, can't participate on that. In fact, you can't prevent them from doing it. You want to encourage them to come. And the return on investment for the ISPs here is somewhere if they build it with the grant money and everything, it can be as high as 5 years for their ROI on their end of it. But in this scenario, it's about 60 to 90 days, depending on what they build. Because we only charge a lease fee for the customers they earn. They don't have to build the whole network and then hope they get 20 or 30% of the market. They only pay for the customers that they've earned. And so it makes it very affordable. And that's part of the reason why we see the prices dropping down for the end users. The other thing we like to see with our ISPs is that they participate in the federal program for low income folks. Everybody that's signed with us so far on the ISP side is on that program. And we have a new provider that has come on board with Hometown Fiber called Lit Communities. And they have a very interesting business model where they provide internet service, but they're really interested in the different applications that people want. So if they want to sign up to DirecTV Stream or something like that, then Lit provides that to them and gets a commission, and that's really how they're making their money. And they have 80 some apps that range anything from TV to phone to medical to security to whatever people want, So it was an interesting business model that we like because it works well with our open source model, and then they can have access to other revenue points. So,
Mr. Chair. About 5-6 years ago, the county did get a Blandon grant money, and combined with that, we did a fiber optic feasibility study, and we spent a lot of money on doing that too. And the conclusion was there's so much bedrock in Pipestone County that the cost would be enormous, to the point where we basically just dropped the subject altogether.
Right.
What's the difference between your guys' study and that one? I mean, are we just going to be getting the same results here?
No. We don't want to duplicate any efforts. We want to look at their study as well, and find out, hey, where did they feel that this was really expensive? There's quite a few different construction techniques that can be used that may lower that or not. It just depends. But, that again, when you're looking at the BEAD grant, again, part of the scoring criteria is, hey, this is really difficult here, and this is why the need is so high, and we make that compelling. We make that argument as to why that is required. But any studies that you have, we would like to review them and make sure that the results of those studies aren't lost or duplicated.
Well, their conclusions were that for Pipestone County, with all the bedrock, our best way to solve the problems, especially with the rural users, was through wireless. And so I know Woodstock Communications has built a few more towers and put up a few more wireless things, but yeah.
How did Rock County get by that? Was it 5 to 8 years ago when they wired the whole county?
They struggled.
They spent a lot of
Jasper.
money, right?
And just recently reminded too with the bridge problem we have in Island about how hard they have boring through the bedrock or whatnot. So it makes me concerned about the costs of wiring the county.
Right. Well, it'll be more than, let's say, if you didn't have bedrock everywhere, right? But we're working, with communities like Duluth and the surrounding areas up there, and that's all granite and bedrock. I mean, some people have bedrock for their driveway up there. It's challenging, but we're dealing with fiber that's really small in size physically, and the ducts are tiny, so you can saw it in, and there's different techniques that are being deployed now more massively. I'm not saying it's not expensive, because it is to go through the rock. So, but again, the idea is to position your community for this next round of grant money, so that even if the number is large, it's not going to be cost prohibitive to do for the communities.
I'm just concerned spending a lot of money and getting the same results, being like, oh, well, too much bedrock, sorry. And then county's out $100,000 or something.
Right.
Just to review the overall scope of the project, so you referred to a central station. So the physical plant, you're proposing we actually put up a structure as a central station and then run fiber out everywhere in the county, even where there's existing fiber, or we collaborate with the existing fiber providers.
Yeah, I'm really not a fan of duplicating effort. I just think that's wasteful. I mean, if there's resources there that can be used, use them.
Okay.
I mean, you know, why do that? It's same thing with the building. I mean, we have certain criteria for the building, but that doesn't mean we can't use something that the county already has or owns or, you know, can add on to or plug into versus building a new. We'd look for all of those opportunities to save. 'Cause I just think it's foolish to.
And then to implement it, then you go to the existing commercial providers and invite them to come into this central station with their signal. And then the end users can pick and choose who they want to tie into it. So how many different providers would be attracted into that? Will it be enough for competition to keep those prices competitive?
Well, we have 3 that will come now, no matter what. So you get 3, right, when you sign with us. That's different than we've talked about before, Commissioner. And we're constantly looking for those providers that are interested in working with us. And but what we're most interested in is attracting the local providers that are here already. You know, we don't want to alienate them. Obviously, they have the choice to join or not join, right? But we would like to get all those agreements together before any grant money is spent or any bonds are issued or anything like that. You want to have the whole thing kind of financially sorted and understand all of the ins and outs of it, what it's going to cost for the consumer, what it's going to cost for construction, all that before you actually spend a lot of money. And that's part of our report here, is that we're taking it to actionable steps, not just it's too expensive. It's here's the areas where it's too expensive, or here's the area where it's really expensive and you need more grant money to offset it.
One of my large concerns, though, is trying to comprehend just how it is that we use public monies for private industry. I just don't see how that works.
I think of it as building a road. You know, you build roads all the time, and private industry uses them, the public uses them. It's the same thing.
Okay,
Yeah.
so then go back to the 30s and 40s when telecommunications, okay, was it the counties that put up the telephone lines? No, it was Ma Bell.
Right.
Until in the 80s, Ma Bell got to be deemed as a monopoly,
wow.
had to be broken up with all these other little mini bells.
Right.
Again, same thing with utilities. So we've got cooperatively owned utilities. There used to be, in fact, Jasper used to be the smallest privately owned utility, and they got bought out by NSP back, was that 30 years? Yeah. So again, you've got cooperatives, you've got privately owned, and then you also have investor-owned utilities.
Yep.
So the same thing, you use the analogy of roads. Okay, now the roads, obviously, other than in some areas of the country where they charge tolls to go on the road, the roads are owned by the public, maintained by the public, it's all public money. So with this fiber, it's not the same thing. It's going to be privately owned. You're going to have to pay to use this. We don't charge people to get on the highway that we use taxpayers' money for.
Right. Well, if you can set it up that way, right? You can do a general levy and apply the cost across all of the citizens or all of the parcels. But we find that that's upsetting to some people who don't want it or don't want to use it, you know. So we do it more like a water or even an electric utility where you pay for what you use in electric, but in water you pay, you know, but you're paying for that infrastructure. And so in the same way, we're looking at broadband access as you're paying for that infrastructure to get to you as your monthly service. And in that way, not everybody has to pay for it, but just the users of it. So it's a little bit different than the road analogy, right? But think of it as the county putting in the handholds and the ducts, and then we're putting in the glass and the fiber and operating the network. You know, if you think about it that way, that's another way to break it out. But the idea is to be able to put it in where others can't, and because you're a county, you have a little bit more resources to you than, let's say, a township or a town, so that when you do an application, you can do a larger application that's more countywide and touch all of these towns and townships, so that they can actually get access to the grant money.
And again, anything is possible if you want to spend enough money on it. So you said where other companies can't. The reason they can't is because it's not cost effective.
Correct.
So why would we then invest taxpayers' money where it's not cost effective. And we're not gonna operate this as a utility. We're gonna put in the infrastructure and then have private industry use it. I guess I just cannot really grasp the concept. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, again, when you're looking at the grant applications, that's gonna be the make or break point. Cause then you'll have all the information. We'll have all of the mapping done. You'd have all of the information available to you on what it's gonna cost and what it's gonna require in each township and town. And when you make those applications to the BEAD program, that's when you're gonna find out, you know, did I get the grant or not? Because there's a certain threshold that has to be met. There's only so much money a community can put into it. And before it becomes too expensive for end users to use, or before it becomes impossible. Now, the only reason that it's even considering in Pipestone, because I understand your geology, we looked at all that before we even really engaged with you guys. But we believe that, like you said, there will be enough support to get the wireline service to everyone. And that's what we're trying to achieve with Pipestone County, is to work with you to get that out there. Now, the community ask can't be greater than, you know, the economics will allow. And you can't be asking people to be spending more than, you have to have base internet service at that $30 level. Otherwise people aren't gonna buy it, right? There's a whole section of the population that just wants $30 internet. And then there's other sections that want more bells and whistles and stuff like that. But if you can't line all that up and the grant doesn't come through for you, then you're back where you are now. But I don't believe that to be the case. I believe that you guys have a compelling argument to get things put together and to, you know, apply for the next round of grants.
The approach that we've taken so far is, as Chris had mentioned too, you know, we've helped support some of the cooperative owned and privately owned utilities, and they've gotten grants. We've helped them secure those grants, and they put in this hybrid system of both wireless and cable or fiber. And then also Dallas's comment about what do we do with the communities that have already got their own, but yet they're still taxpayers. So how do we take their money and spend it on something, providing services for something that they don't need?
Again, I don't think you're taking their money. You'd be applying for,
It's tax dollars.
well,
Tax dollars is everything.
the way this gets paid back though is through the user fees, not tax revenue. I mean, that's the big difference. You know, it's a different source of money than tax money.
But if that's the case, wouldn't you be operating it yourself as a government versus, I mean, in order for network users to make the bond payments, the government would actually have to be running the program themselves instead of those payments going to a private business.
Well, you got to think of it more like you're leasing out the government resource to the private sector. I mean, people that are in the government side of the fence that have tried to operate these things, and there's been quite a few that have tried it.
And we don't want to be in that position.
No, that's a really bad scenario.
So you're saying that we would charge these companies a fee then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
For
And then,
the-
but you guys would have the thing that we want to make sure happens is that the public money, whether that's the federal money that's going through your board or local resources or whatever that's put into it, we're going to make sure that there's this level of oversight, that there is control over how much people are getting assessed and charged for use, because, you know, if you don't have it affordable for people
Right, they won't get it.
and reliable and available, I mean, that's the real goal here. And it does require a public-private partnership to get done. And the federal government is providing quite a bit more money coming down the pike again for this to occur. And one of the focuses are on the areas that are hard to do because previous grants haven't got it done. So,
Okay, and then where, a number of the towns are hardwired now. I mean, Woodstock wired Holland a number of years ago. Pipestone obviously is wired. But yet, the service that we have in those towns is not the high speed that it should be. Sorry for whatever companies are upset by that, but it is what it is. Your feeling, or based on what you've said, you think that you can increase the speeds with those existing lines?
Well, we would need to evaluate where that is possible, yes. Right? I mean, we need to figure that out. Yeah.
So you may have to replace some of those based on your study or not, depending on what they used or,
Yeah.
you know.
So we're evaluating down to the parcel level, and again, not trying to duplicate anything, because if it's there, we should use it. But a lot of times, if there's a community that has an ISP that's serving it, but it's coming up a little short in a couple areas and it can't quite get over the hump, well, then it's more advantageous to say, well, instead of us building all the way through there, let's give them a little bit of grant money to get them up to speed with that area versus duplicating it. So that's part of what that first study is doing, is figuring out where all of those things are and then going into the areas that aren't.
And are you at liberty to share which 3 companies are you working with? You said you had 3 providers that you would have for choices. Which 3?
The third one, they don't want to disclose yet, but the first one is Flume. It's an ISP out of New York, and they have an interesting business model. They're a bare bones service provider with customer support, and they just provide basic internet service at low cost, right? And so that's their whole game. And they're leveraging their assets in New York and LA to come into our rural areas with low cost, right? So that's how they're getting it done. Because to be honest, some of the prices that they're charging they're losing on us, but they want, for whatever reason, they're willing to do that. The other one is called Lit Communities, and they're out of Ohio. And they're the ones that are app-based. And the third one is a local Minnesota company, but again, they are a little sensitive until it's time to sign because they have competitors and they don't want to upset the apple cart too much right now.
Did you say, is that local provider not one that we currently have?
Yes.
Okay.
So the goal is to keep it affordable. Okay,
Reliable, affordable, fast.
so,
Yes.
so to be able to regulate the cost of the end user, don't we already have that set up through the Public Utilities Commission? Don't they regulate what you pay for electricity, what you pay for telephone service? So why is this different?
You can go back to 1984 with Judge Green and that ruling
Yep.
that they're not regulated. Broadband is not regulated like that. Now telephone service is.
Yes.
Electricity is.
Yes.
So the problem with right now in the broadband industry, one of the things that's preventing companies like the telcos, let's say the Frontier and the CenturyLinks, from providing broadband is that they're not allowed to abandon the twisted pair because they're regulated, right? And so they're losing somewhere between $60 and $70 billion a year keeping the twisted pair services running so that people have dial tone. And there's a real problem at the federal level trying to figure out how to transition over. So they're just hoping that more and more broadband and more fiber will eventually allow these people to unhook from the copper. One of the providers is working with a modem system that has FXS ports on it for telephone. But then you have the idea of, well, you need a UPS on there, and so the cost starts to go back up a little bit. But the idea is to start providing wireline service for phone, but converting it right at the premise versus at the central offices.
You referenced the old twisted pair, okay? Technology changes.
Yes, it does.
So again, go back to the 30s and 40s. We had power poles dug, we had steel wires strung. That's changed. You had party lines. That's
Yeah,
all
the party
changed,
line.
okay? In fact, right now, you go out in the country, you don't find very many people in the country that even have a hardline telephone at all.
Right.
It's wireless, okay? So why would we invest all this taxpayer money in technology, and we don't know what the next change in technology will be? look down the road another 5 years, 10 years. I never would have dreamed 20 years ago that we'd have
Right.
people not using phones.
Right.
So we know the wireless capability is there with satellites. But right now we're being told, well, you know, there's not enough bandwidth or not enough frequencies. It's not that.
Well, I think with the satellite, if I may answer that question, before we even started Hometown Fiber, we were aware of like Elon Musk's SpaceX and what that is doing. Really impressive technology, by the way. It's pretty cool what they're doing. But the cost and the price of that service and the way the satellites are orbiting requires you to have line of sight to one of his satellites every 9 minutes. And in Pipestone, that's probably possible. In other areas where you have different topology or it's heavily forested or something, that window shrinks way down. And our evaluation of it was that if you're an airline, if you're a cruise ship, if you're a military, if you're a car, something that can't be tethered, that might be worth paying the extra money to get. But as far as the available bandwidth in that and the available orbiting paths, which will continue to improve over time, it's still the higher end users are going to suck all that up. So, and then the Ukraine conflict is an example of that, or the war there, is that SpaceX rerouted the orbiting paths of a lot of their satellites to make sure that there's heavy saturation over the Ukraine. So that battlefield got all of these orbiting paths to change, which dramatically reduced the ability for people here in the United States to receive it. Now, if you happen to be in the very southern tip of Canada, and you know, they're orbiting past there like crazy, so you got a great service up there for those people with a cabin, like say like on Rainy Lake or something. You might be going, "This is great."
Same thing, technology, also GPS. Okay, they're using satellites too. Again, nobody uses a map and compass anymore. It's GPS.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and you know, part of the wireline argument is, you know, when you build it as critical infrastructure, it's different than putting direct bury in. You know, if you think about what if the Ma Bell system would have put all those drop cables into conduit, or if they would have buried everything in conduit, how much easier it'd be to upgrade today, you know? And so that's one of the things that we're trying to do is say, look, telecommunications or broadband or whatever you want to call it is critical infrastructure. I don't think anybody's going to deny that we haven't crossed that road, and so we want to build it like that. That's the key to it.
Do you know when the 47 billion may be available?
They're looking at that as let's see, 2024, 2023, 24. I think so. Probably late 23 if I have my timing right. You'll have to have your grants kind of ready to go. But I don't know if they're going to do that like before September, because the federal budgets kick in September. So I don't know like when they're going to do that. I haven't seen the announcement of when those are going to be due, but it takes some time to do what we want to do, and winter's approaching, so we'd like to, you know.
Right, I guess that was my next question is, so at what point do you feel that we'd have to be, if we wanted to do something, when would we have to know in order to meet the timeline to qualify for those funds?
Well, I would say, you know, spring of next year would be on the outside for our company, because we've got people stacking up for this, and there's a limited capacity of us. So there's a little bit of a bubble there for us. But I think that if you were to do something by that time frame, you would have enough time to put it together. Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay. Steve, you have anything?
Just, I noticed that there's a reference to the mayor of Comfrey. That's Cottonwood County, right?
Yes.
Yeah. That's
Are you
in,
working with Cottonwood County?
not the county, just the city of
Just the
Comfrey.
city, okay.
Brown County.
Hmm?
Brown County.
Oh, Brown County's that?
Well, they kind of,
On the border?
yeah, there's a little bit of that town in both. but,
Okay.
Yeah. So. Yeah, the references, feel free. Those are people that have been working with us, and, you know, have at it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Nick?
Good morning.
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 Not much for me today, really short, but I just wanted to update you that that surplus equipment is listed on the county website, and it'll be we'll post an ad in the newspaper referencing the website as well, so people can find that. But you know, go ahead and share the word now. But it's on there now. So
Hey Nick, since I missed it when you guys posted that, what equipment got listed on there?
that was that surplus equipment that we offered to cities and townships.
First, yep.
It's the stuff that's left over from that round. Now we're offering it up to the public. Same process. Still, well, actually, it's a little bit different process. They are to submit sealed bids to me, and with the cities, I opened them and just summarized it and brought that here. But with the public ones, I'll just open those here at the 13th. Does that sound right? September? Yeah. We'll open them on that meeting. So.
Thank you.
And I have received some interest already. Some people stopped and looked at a couple things. So, I mean, I think we're going to get some bids on that stuff. So that'd be good. Next up, just a projects update. We have 7 box culverts done and 6 to go. So we're a little over halfway on that for the year, which is nice, considering this time of year. So, usually we're just getting started. So that's good. And then the bridges by Island, they'll be done pouring the last of the concrete this week yet. So they're removing forms on the one that they started on, and so then they've started painting it, so they have to finish painting it and install that decorative rail, and then do a little bit of shaping for the dirt, which is hopefully done this week if they get going on that, and then pave it, and then we should be open to traffic. So we're nearing the end of both of those.
Question, Mr. Chair, can you get concrete?
We haven't had a problem yet.
You haven't had a problem yet?
No.
Well, it's becoming a problem
It
getting
is.
it.
Okay.
So,
Well,
especially in the local area, the 3 different windmill projects they're having a hard time getting the powder.
yeah,
Sioux Falls has a hard time getting the powder. They're restricting guys that can only pour so many times. They're not doing Saturday anymore in Sioux Falls.
oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just a heads up,
Okay, well,
just we need another shortage.
I just noticed in Flanger, they're 6 days a week. I see Buffalo Ridge there, several trucks, probably half a dozen every day.
In the last week though,
Last 2 months.
no, but they're running out now.
okay. Well, we've only got the railing left on the bridge west of town, so.
Not much.
No, not much for yards.
Okay.
Plus, I don't know how those subcontracts or how those contracts work, but, this project being bid, quite a while back, maybe ours is set aside, since we ordered it or, whatever, the contractor booked it so long ago, that could be too, I don't know, but, I haven't heard of any shortage yet, and we're like that close to the finish line, so hopefully they just be done with us, just, get us out of their hair, I guess, so. Other than that, that's all I had for today. Any questions for me?
Any questions for Nick? Well, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, well, have a good day.
Take 5.
You wanna take 5? Okay, we'll recess for 5 minutes. Okay, we're back in session again. Casey? Morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Thank you for squeezing me in again. This morning, I just have a request for our grant contract agreement for the 2021 Emergency Management Performance Grant to be signed. For this grant, we were awarded $16,549, and we have to keep track throughout the year and do progress reports quarterly, and some other reports and whatnot to make sure we are compliant with all the requirements for the grant. So we just got notification about a week ago that they had processed everything and we were awarded, so we just need the signature, and I will get that and the FSR submitted for payment.
Just have one question regarding the contract term, most of which has already lapsed. Is this one of those where you can't use the money until you actually have it?
No.
Okay, because otherwise, 2 months from now, the term's gonna end.
I think this is mostly just for the signing of it. They want us to get it signed before the expiration date hits. And I know like HSCM was playing catch up after the whole COVID, everything and whatnot, because we just got paid for our previous grants already this year. And the 2019 and the 2020 EMPG grants were very late in processing. And I know we just got paid, I think, for the 2021 just a couple months ago. And the 2019 one was not much before that.
So yeah, they were a couple of years back.
Yes.
Okay.
This is actually the 21 grant.
This is
which
the
isn't
21 grant,
So we're
so
a year
we
behind, they're
yep.
a year behind on this one too.
Yes.
And I see it as a matching grant, so we have to match that dollar for dollar, and that's in your budget, I assume?
Correct.
Any restrictions on what this grant money can be used for?
There are typically, I mean, it can fall under like the category of training, and, you know, salary can fall under that.
Yeah, but you'll be able to utilize it all.
Correct.
Great. Well, Mr. Chair, I will move that we approve this grant agreement request.
Okay,
Second.
and we have a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, who do you need signed on the grant and stuff?
Probably less, and you, I think, is
Do you have to
typically
sign too?
what we have done.
You signed in online too as well?
Yes.
Okay, so the
I
three
will.
of us, okay,
Yeah.
well, that's myself and you, okay.
And if you wanna do that, I can pick it up from you this afternoon too.
We can sign it right now and you can finish it up, how's that sound?
Okay. No, I don't. That's only for sending
You
it
can
in,
fill out the rest.
but I'll upload
Sign
it on.
there and I'll have her sign in the middle. Perfect.
Ed, you're up next.
And then just send me a copy of the bills. That work?
Yep, absolutely.
A little more formal than our township meetings.
You think?
Oh, yeah. I've owned a piece of property in Woodstock for 20-plus years. And all of a sudden, last year, I got a letter from the auditor that there's a third of an acre in there that I don't own. And I don't know, it just don't seem right after 20 years. The guy and then last year, they sent me a bill for $500 and some for penalty and interest. So I said, if I pay that, will I own it then? Well, no, you wouldn't own it, so I don't know why I would have paid that, but it just don't seem right. I don't know if somebody's got that kind of time to be sitting around finding something like that, and it's coming up for sale tomorrow for back taxes. And as I see that, it's 10.42 acres, and when they took the third of an acre out, it's still the same amount, so I've been paying taxes on that for 20 years. I don't know if they're gonna reimburse me for that or not. I think I know.
Steve, I remember that Joyce explained this to us, and I don't recall all the details anymore now. Have you got some notes on that?
I thought after so many years, you just,
Coming up to,
I don't know what the right word is, but
No. Man, did you have any more information on this as well? I think you probably have a little bit more on it
There
than
we go, great.
the history of it at least, anyway.
All right, so yeah, basically there's this parcel, and this parcel, that it did get tax forfeited because the taxes weren't paid on it. And it had been in P.H. Daniels' name, which, looking back on the documents that were filed with legal descriptions and stuff, this must have not been, included, and it must have got dropped in some of the legal descriptions when property was transferred. There was a quitclaim deed that was filed, and that listed, again, that tax statements were to go to Ed and Kathy. And so then when we reached out to them and let them know that we had found this and that their name was related to this piece that was up for tax forfeiture, you know, then that's when all this discussion had kind of come into play. And again, who owns it, that sort of thing, that would be an attorney question. But again, by doing that quitclaim deed, that's in essence their way of getting their name associated with the property, is my understanding. But I can't say anything as far as owning, that sort of thing, and how that works with legal descriptions.
My feeling on this, if somebody buys it tomorrow, I'm not gonna buy it, they can't get to it.
That's
I
right.
understand it's kinda out in the middle of mine.
There's no right of way.
Well, it come down to Casey Jones Trail, but they don't like that either. Dan wouldn't let that. I think, I mean, they can't tell me exactly where it is either, you know, but I think it kind of is next to the trail there, but.
Yeah, well, along the old railroad bed, isn't it?
Yeah.
And is that probably part of the confusion on this too, because that railroad right away and it being a little sliver, it's just kind of been one of those confusing things, so.
It is a piece of property within the city of Woodstock. It is not within the township if you look at it. So
Okay.
if you look at where it's at one time that was, who knows what it was gonna be part of, but, I mean, we don't know that, but without having someone do a full title search and opinion on this, you know, this is what you've got and this is what it is. But, you know, I mentioned to Ed a week or so when we talked, I said, it's probably cheaper to buy this for the 500 at the auction than it was to pay the back taxes on it over the last number of years, so.
I guess I'd have to look to see how much.
This
the
P.H.
taxes-
Daniels, I checked that out, he's been dead for 72 years.
So we can blame it on him, is that what you're saying?
For
what
whatever
I would
reason,
do.
when that was,
So, yeah, the taxes and penalties and interest that were owing on it was $176.12. And I guess Ed had decided to just let it go to forfeiture, is what we were told. So. And I think if I recall, you know, like when you go through forfeiture, then you get that clean title, so to say. I mean, you would have that title. You wouldn't have that discrepancy with the fact that it did get dropped for how long. So, and again, I think if I recall right, Domain had told me something about, I don't know if he said 40 years, like by them doing that quitclaim deed, then the clock starts or something. I'm not sure. Again, this is a legal thing that he'd need to consult on, but I thought I recalled something about 40 years. But don't quote me.
The land itself, have you been farming the land?
Yes, we farm it, yeah.
Yeah, because again, you thought it was part of your land, it just, yeah, I can understand why you would have thought that. And I think it seems to me from my comprehension, it's just one of those nuances. And as we've gone through the records trying to rectify things, it's just something that we found that this was never taken care of before. If you think about it though in the future, because sometime you're gonna have to transfer your property to your heirs. And wouldn't it be easier just to get
That's basically been done already, but.
okay, but wouldn't doesn't this need to be cleaned up eventually?
Yeah, it's in O'Hearn Trust right now.
Oh, okay, it is, yeah. So when it went in the trust, it wasn't found then either.
It's really weird that it wouldn't be found if that guy's been dead for 72 years.
You know,
This is a new one.
what would you propose, Ed?
I would give you $1 to buy it. I mean, there's no sense me paying $500 for it. I mean, it's not the end of the world, but it's not really hurting me if I don't own it.
Does this little piece of land generate its own tax statement?
And it hasn't been paid for the however many years. It was getting returned to our office.
If he buys it for $1, can it be added to this other parcel? And so it wouldn't generate its own tax statement anymore?
So once something has been bought and it is in their name, that sort of thing, then they can choose to combine parcels, yes.
Yeah, cause Elmer Township deserted a dead road and that abutted mine. And then we finally just, instead of generating its own paperwork all the time, we just
Yeah.
combined it with mine.
Yep, there's a checklist, of course, of things that need to be.
There's procedures to
As
go
long
through,
as
but
those are met, then you can combine a parcel.
does that sound like an option, Ed?
What's that?
Either pay for it at the sale or pay the back taxes and have it combined with the rest of the parcel.
I don't know that we can go back.
Either or.
I mean, it has been forfeited, it is in the state's name now.
What happens if nobody buys it tomorrow? Then what happens?
Nothing. It sits there until someone wants to buy it. It'll just sit.
Your $1 offer still stands then?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Now, what about this taxes I've been paying? Are you gonna come up with that, or?
So
You're
the
not-
taxes haven't been paid
you're
on
not
this
paying the
parcel,
taxes on
that's
this
why.
I think I've been paying taxes on it for 20 years. Because
That would be
my
on a
farm
different-
didn't get any smaller after you took the third of an acre off of it. It's still 10.42. So evidently, I've been paying
So,
taxes on
and-
that third of an
yeah.
acre for 20 years.
We could, look into that with the assessor, but yeah, this is
But
a
I would
separate
let it go if you'd
parcel.
sell it for $1.
So Amanda, you mentioned that, so the tax statement, so there has been a tax statement generated.
Yep.
And that statement was sent to Ed,
It was sent to PH Daniels and is always returned to us.
cause he's deceased and that, and so what happened to his heirs, Daniels? Does he have other property?
Nothing about it.
That's who I bought it from.
The Daniels,
That was a family affair forever and ever.
yeah.
In fact, this Daniels was my wife's grandfather. And we bought it from his daughters.
So your wife gets the $1.
She's gotta come up with it.
Well, I can understand, like you said, because it's all gone through the process. It's not like we can just say, oh, never mind, we won't
No,
sell it.
I just wanted to bring it up and see what you guys thought of it, but
Just try to find the most reasonable and logical way of straightening up this little error. Because you always run into little glitches like this. You mentioned that piece of property, yeah, too. There's always those little things. So it's just a matter of getting it cleaned up and doing it in a fair manner. And I don't know what that is.
I think you mentioned if it doesn't sell, we're able to change the price at a later date.
Yep, it would we would put it up for sale in future sales or whatever, and then you could adjust the price. But at this point, the minimum price has been set, so.
Right.
I don't know who's gonna bid on it.
Right, I doubt anyone, since you can't get there.
Ed, how long does it take for this little piece of land to generate enough revenue to pay that $500?
well, if you talk to farmers, there's no money in farming, so it'll take forever. No, I don't know.
It might work at $1.
The danger is that even though it's landlocked, there's no access into it, that still doesn't preclude someone from bidding it up tomorrow. Because again, we set that minimum price at $500 and that was calculated on it.
If somebody does buy it, then I want them to survey it and tell me where it's at too. It'd be another $1,000 for them.
Yep, yep. What's your thoughts?
Do we have any other options? Other than,
At this point, I mean, it is up for public sale. It's been forfeited and it is up for public sale. And so, again, And then if it does not sell, as Steve said, then it would stay in the state's name until, you know, we have our next sale and include it.
I mean,
There's really no action to take at this time.
I would think it's pretty unlikely anyone's gonna want a sliver of an acre for, that's landlocked and.
Yeah.
Cause my first thought was, I'm just gonna buy it and clear it up, but the more I thought about it, I mean, what if next year they find another piece out there I don't know?
Have to talk to your deceased relatives, I guess.
I guess we just let it ride. Hopefully nobody bids on it tomorrow, or I don't see who would bid on it. The only way to it is on foot or a bicycle.
Yep. So we just leave it at that for now?
If somebody does, don't plan anything on it, so they won't have anything.
Well, they gotta tell me where it is first if they buy it. Well, thank you for your time.
You bet. Thanks, Ed.
Tomorrow.
Maybe while Amanda's still here too, if we could, before you go. Amanda, so then tomorrow at 10 o'clock is the tax forfeit property sale.
It is,
And
yep.
it'll be in this room at 10 o'clock. Okay, just
Yep.
wanna, again, get that word out one more time, so,
Required to be here?
No,
no.
unless you're interested.
And if
you're
someone
good.
wants to be the auctioneer, in Nobles County, they told me that one of the commissioners is their auctioneer, so. You can let me know if you're interested.
Traditionally, it's always been your office that's taking care of that, so.
No, and it's fine, we will take care of it. I will make sure I have someone else there so that we can
I
have
intend
someone
to come
recording
just
the
as
information.
an observer, but
Yep,
I'm not an auctioneer by
like I
any means.
said, one of you are excited about it. You
I
certainly
think you'll do a
can.
great job.
A new hat to wear.
Yeah, exactly.
Auctioneer.
So, okay, perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kathy, you have some personnel?
Morning.
Morning.
Basically, what I have for personnel today is just recruiting updates, and I did hand out a paper this morning before the board meeting. Brandy Olson started on August 15th as a full-time jailer dispatcher. And then Michael Ralla started the same day as well on August 15th. And the individual that Steve had requested a salary approval for never got back to us. So actually we moved on to another candidate, and that was this Michael Ralla that we hired. So we hired him on step B of the pay plan. And then just a hiring update on the rest of the openings. We had 2 candidates for the mechanic, which we finished those interviews yesterday, and we'll be checking references and hope to make an offer later this week for that position. The appraiser position, we're currently advertising, and that closes next week, but it's open until filled. But our first review is next Monday for those applications. And then deputy sheriff, we had 2 candidates and we're interviewing them this week. And the highway maintenance worker, Ruthden Shop, we are hoping to interview that this week or next week. And that's all of our current openings.
Any questions for Kathy?
Does that happen very often, that they don't get back to you after you offered them something?
It's been happening more lately.
So, boy, people really don't wanna work, huh? Even when you're offered one, you don't, no thanks.
And you're very sure that they actually received the offer, they're just ghosting you. It's not like it got
Yes,
lost.
I'm sure, so.
Anything else, Kathy?
No, that's it for today.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
I guess the next thing coming up would be the membership of Southwest Mental Health Center in Laverne. Last week, Tuesday, Rock County Board voted to withdraw effective the end of the year, 12/31. Their vote was 5-0. Beth from Southwest Health and Human Services has been working with us, and we've had several meetings with her. I don't know if Western out of Marshall is gonna go into Rock County or not, but I kinda look like thinking maybe they will get down there a little bit, but they are gonna help here in Pipestone County, along with, we've got contracts with the two new providers in Pipestone County already, and expanding that a little bit more. So, and with the additional wants of Southwest Mental Health of an additional $500,000, and it's not a one-time shot in the arm, it sounds like it'd be year after year after year, and it can go up. That's what prompted Rock County to get out, the uncertainty. And we've been going for the last couple of years, losing a lot of dollars.
And services, mostly.
Yep.
Yeah.
What has our financial contribution been? Like I said, they're asking for an additional $500,000. What have we been paying at this point through Health and Human Services? Has it been a set fee or has it been a user fee?
For Pipestone and Rock, the two organizations, I think Health and Human Services puts $420,000 into mental health.
For the two counties.
Yeah.
So they wanted more than double that was their ask, and as we had that long discussion with him and so forth, and his reserves and so forth. So I don't see that that's viable for us. It certainly is not
Well,
economical.
we've been kinda left high and dry. They pulled out of the county.
Yeah.
I know, a number of years ago, we looked at, that was a couple years ago, we looked at moving them into Jasper.
Well,
Sunrise,
first we talked about the old second floor of the hospital.
but that wasn't big enough.
I'd say they didn't like that, or visibility, they didn't like the visibility, if I remember right, was one of their complaints.
But then we talked about putting them down in Sunrise, buying that building for them.
Yep.
That was
Well,
Didn't wanna commute 11
they
miles.
said they had too many people clients that bicycled.
Yeah.
Well, what
They wanted us to
happened when
build
they
them a
pulled
new
out of
building.
Pipestone? Did they bicycle to Laverne?
Yeah. They wanted us to build them a new building.
Yeah.
According to the 2022 budget, we have a 50-50 split at $350,667 currently. And they were proposing a 2023 budget split 50-50 of $1,050,000.
Yep.
Yeah.
So a $700,000 increase.
Yep.
But that's not guaranteeing we're getting services in Pipestone either.
No,
No. In fact, we know that we're not.
Right.
I mean, the fact that they have gained 3 people and lost 10 in the last year, doesn't bode well for them to have service here or frankly, almost anywhere it seems that.
And how many of our citizens utilize the services? So what does that actually equate to per user?
I don't know.
We
Do you
don't,
remember, Chris?
I don't know per user, but it's actually more than what I thought.
Yeah,
Which
it was way more than I anticipated.
and again, they get reimbursed then from Medicare, Medicaid, or Prime West, whatever their carrier is, for those visits as well.
They get, the list of insurance companies is probably 25, 30 long.
Yep. But my point being is that the citizens that utilize that, they are paying for that through their Medicare, Medicaid, or
Some are,
insurances
some
and so
are.
forth.
Some have no insurance.
Yep.
But the insurance rate wasn't paying even half of the cost for those psychiatrists.
No.
So the other half was being swallowed by the county.
And our current contract runs through the end of this year. It expires in December.
Well, really, there is,
No,
there
there's
is no
not.
contract.
No.
We don't have a year-to-year contract with them, okay?
Our payments are made through our levy to Southwest Health and Human Services on our budget line item for social services.
Yeah,
We don't
'cause
have a
basically-
specific levy for Southwest Health and Human Services. We
Right.
do not make a direct appropriation to them.
Because they're basically a vendor or a contractor then for Health and Human Services is how that arrangement's been, so,
It comes down through DSS.
yeah.
And it's not a joint powers, it's a 501c3 if you remember correctly.
So then in essence, by us taking action today, we would be, if we approve this, we'd be denying his request for an additional 500,000 and also saying that we just don't really see it feasible to
Well, we
use him
wouldn't
as a
be
vendor.
denying it, we're just not gonna be part of the organization for the 23 budget.
Yeah,
So we wouldn't even be putting in the current amount.
right, exactly. And that current amount we've been putting in goes directly to Southwest, it doesn't go through Health and Human Services. The 300,000.
It goes to Southwest, it goes right to
Health and Human
Health and
Services.
Youth and Human Services through,
And then they pay it out
They
to
pay it
them.
out.
Okay,
But if we go a different direction, they'll be paying it out to somebody else.
exactly, yeah.
And right now, they are paying some of the contractors or people that are doing business in Pipestone, they are paying to them
Right.
now.
And just looking at these other counties involved, I mean, if Nobles were to stay in, they're requesting an additional 640,000 roughly from them. And from, Des Moines Valley, which is Cottonwood and Jackson.
Yep.
They're requesting, about 650 additional from them. My guess is none of those counties, I would think, would get too excited about those type of increases.
Right.
Well, after last week's meeting, Kyle Oldry, he called me, but then he'd also called the other administrators in Nobles County, Cottonwood County, and Jackson County. In Des Moines Valley, which is Jackson and Cottonwood, those administrators knew nothing about it.
Really? Didn't know about the
Because-
increase even?
Yeah, because Des Moines Valley has a big surplus or a lot of money in reserves. They're just gonna pull it out of reserves and not charge it back to the counties.
But Lou Como's request to us though, for the additional 500, that was.
700.
It's additional 500 over.
Well, according to the budget figures that he presented, they're showing we're currently at 350 and they were gonna go to $1,050,000. That's 700.
But that was between the two counties.
Right, that was between the two counties, so it'd be an additional 350 for us, on top of the 175 we're already paying.
But was he expecting that money to be paid directly to him?
No, it would go through still
Southwest
Health and Human Services, but,
they'd be increasing their levy amount to the counties.
Yep. So by us taking action today, then we'll be directing Southwest Health and Human Services, which we're a part of, to no longer use them as a vendor. Yep. It's not that we're withdrawing from their group, we're just no longer gonna use them as a vendor.
We're withdrawing from Southwest Mental Health.
Yep, yep,
So we'll try to get the same services or more services
right,
with Western coming down.
yep.
and with the private ones being here already
Right.
in person.
I will make that a motion if it's appropriate.
I would second that. And your motion is to leave
Withdraw.
Southwest Health and
Correct.
Human Service and
Southwest Mental.
go with whoever.
Southwest Mental Health.
Or, yeah, Southwest Mental Health. And, of course, that we would
Provide for our
also,
people some other way.
yeah. And we would also want to put in a notice for next year that we want to get paid back for our building.
We can't do that until September of next year.
Okay. But whatever the earliest time is.
Yep.
And of course, if the other counties would all decide to get out, maybe they would just take care of it right away, cause,
Well, if Nobles County decides to bail out too, that would dissolve it. Then everything get paid off, cleared up, and split up.
And they divvy up the money,
Now we've got the buyout that's in the bylaws.
right? But my guess is they're not gonna wanna carry the load for
No,
the whole group.
So we'll be leaving Southwest Mental Health Center effective 12/31/31.
Yep.
21, excuse me.
yeah, 22.
22.
How long are you on vacation, Steve?
Too long or not long enough?
One or the other.
Okay, any further discussion?
I have a second on the motion.
Luke.
Luke, thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I will, or do you wanna send an
I'll send a
email?
letter. You want,
Send a letter, you and I can sign it.
Yep.
I'll call Kyle, cause he kinda wanted to know.
okay.
And then you are two representatives then on that board, so
Right.
you'll finish out this year on that board as you get things wrapped up.
And you just gotta remember that a year from September is the only time you can opt out on those loans that were given.
Yep.
10
Unless they
years-
dissolve and pay it out sooner.
Yeah,
And we've got, you know, and as Luke Coleman mentioned at our last meeting, he thought that we would have to pay him money to cancel the contract.
Right, and that's,
No,
was a
that
mistake.
was reversed. So the figure that he presented to us of what our equity is was somewhere around, what was it, $60,000 equity, something like that.
39,000 or,
it's 39,000 our buyout.
Okay, yeah. And that doesn't count the loans that we made then for
No.
Unity House, that's separate. Yeah.
That's separate. So we're getting more interest there on those than what we get anyplace else.
Yeah.
How soon would you have that ready to go, Steve, that we can sign it?
I'll get it done this afternoon.
Okay, I'll stop back after our meeting then.
Sounds good?
And again, just to point out the obvious, and then we still are providing services for us.
Yes,
We haven't pulled out, we haven't cut our nose off to spite our face here, we've taken care of our people.
the things will continue as they are
Yeah.
until the end of the year. Then hopefully it'll be better.
Yeah, but even at the end of the year, we do have provisions for taking care of people's needs. In fact, in my opinion, they'll be taken care of better.
right? And even now, they can go to those local providers.
Oh, yes.
Yes, yeah.
And Beth says she'll take care of, and for like Rock County people, she told Greg Burgers if they had to and somebody needs the services, they'd have to pay bus fare to and from Rock County up here. Okay, moving on. Got a little time before Jody. Judicial ditch 1.
Mr. Chairman, I have in your packet a request for board approval to double D gravel to repair bulkheads in the ditch system for $39,500. The ditch committee met on this on August 10th and approved the quote as well. Wanted to bring that to the board as well to have board approval on that. And you can see on the maps, the ones that are noted. That whole portion of the ditch in the southeast portion was cleaned out last year up to section 28 and 33 where the ditch crosses under Highway 23. So the whole southeast section has been cleaned out with sediment, rock. So there are a number of bulkheads that do require repair. So, and it's gonna be a big job for them, but figure they can get the work done today. So we'll either be, repair the spots by fixing or removing the bulkheads, repairing tile lines, filling in washouts, with riprap, reshaping and adding new riprap as necessary where needed. So ditch committee already approved, so basically need the board to approve same.
Mr. Chair, I'd move for approval.
I will second.
Okay,
Discussion. I assume that basically this is just normal maintenance, a
Yes.
little bit of erosion. There wasn't a specific event that caused this, so there's no specific disaster money to
Just
be
fair
attributed
wear
to
and
it.
tear.
Just normal wear and
Disaster,
tear.
it's just
Yep,
time,
yep. Okay,
just erosion over time.
Yep, fair wear and tear.
Yep.
Okay, all in favor?
aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
For my information, this whole ditch runs southwest. Is that
Right.
correct? The water runs,
Then winds through
Comes from
Pipestone on the
Holland.
north side.
and it all goes through the north side of Pipestone.
Yep.
That's part of the problem, huh? Mm-hmm. When Pipestone floods.
In fact, Luke, if I'm not mistaken, pretty much all of the water in Pipestone County runs to the southwest, with the exception of one little creek in the very north that does run to the
north.
east.
It goes into Des Moines Valley.
The Mines
Well,
Valley.
of course, the part from Hatfield way, you know, that little branch of the ditch is actually going to the northwest, obviously.
Water goes three different ways out of Pipestone County. North, Sioux River, and to the rock.
Right.
Yep.
Then, Steve, you got, another ditch, number 123 levy action.
Ditch Committee also approved the 2023 ditch assessment and requesting an assessment of $60,000. That would be assessed to the property owners within the ditch system next year.
Here I'd move for approval.
Second.
Any further discussion? Not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
So the county's paying for the repairs and
No,
this 39 will come out of the 60?
No, the landowners.
the
pay for
landowners
it.
that put water into it. that drains
Those that
their line.
benefit from the ditch pay for the repairs on the ditch.
Yeah.
What we did last year is we did a short-term borrow from the county to get the ditch cleaned
get
out last season, and that's
And
being.
collected it from people.
And it was collected with half of it was collected with the June distribution, taxes in May, and distribution paid back in June. The next one will be the second half when they're due in October.
That's why we had to approve it. All right.
Approving this, they're not asking for a loan this time for this. They have money in the account.
Good.
They're not doing a big project next year. They're gonna do some more, maintenance work, riprap. They've got some bulkheads and things in the northern part of it that need work too.
Then you have, second quarter budget report.
Yep. Made a copy of that, Commissioner, so you just know where everything is at. Reason, if you're looking through there, the reason independent audit is high is that we paid for the 2020 audit as they finished it up, and they're now working on the 21 audit, so that's why some of it pushed over into this year from the 20 audit when they finished it up, because remember we had Amanda here not too long ago to take care of that. So other than that, items are primarily where we should be for the second quarter, unless there's any specific questions the board has. The conservation budget at 601, that's all through Kyle, that's all restricted funds. Money goes out, money comes in. They're at this time over, so there'll be more money to bring that back around. So it's, again, that's not a levy account, that's outside the levy, those are, so. And that's basically it, unless board members have any specific questions or any specific budget issues.
Just a general comment that, where the sheriff's budget is over by quite a bit, we should probably do a little better job of, defining that in advance, since it is partially paid by the city as well as the county.
Issues with that, we ran into vehicle purchases. The vehicles we were supposed to be buying later this year showed up.
Right. So that you think accounts for the whole difference?
Not the whole difference, I'm sure.
A lot of it.
A lot of it. Those are the biggest items that they've got, is everything vehicle related. For the most part, that was,
And I think another thing was when we had to outsource our jail.
Right.
yes.
And hopefully we're done doing that for the most
It's
part.
getting pretty full up there.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, if we're full, I guess we don't have a choice, but.
Any other questions? You have it down as action item, Steve. We need a motion on that.
Yes, please.
Move to approve the second quarter budget report.
I'll support that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. All we need is Jody.
Just a reminder for the board, upcoming meetings, we have special budget meeting on the 30th. I'll be getting that posted this week for the media, so everyone knows there's a special meeting, and that'll be a full day. Everybody had their budget schedules, and we'll be rescheduling Joyce in either that meeting or a future meeting into September, and then our normal board meetings in September. So,
I did arrange the time with work to be here
Awesome.
for that.
Okay.
Should we recess until Jody gets here?
Maine did send.
I gotta do sweet corn tomorrow, so.
okay, we're live.
Okay, we're back in session again, and we have Jody Wacker with the library here to present budget.
Yes, thank you for having me. So I have brought a budget forward to you, and it's kind of a work in progress, just simply. So if you look at the very left column, the approved 2022-23, that is what our library board approved back in June. Going forward, that is with our funding as it was at the start of my budget cycle, obviously, which is July through June. And so for comparison, I have the 2021-2022 all the way on the right side, and that is what we operated on last year. And in the middle, the divided 2022-23, that is kind of the impact that we are looking at financially if an agreement cannot be reached between the school and the city, and the impact that will have on our finances and kind of what we may need to do different moving forward. And some of that is we did ask the city for a 3% increase. So currently they give $120,000 worth of support. We're asking for a 3%, which would put them at roughly $123,600. And we're also asking, I know you guys have given and increased over the years and already did give us a little bump, but we are asking for another, for a 3% increase for you from the city or county, because some of the things that are impacted are highlighted in yellow. And so the top number, the 128,800, that is our salaries. Those are things that I'm not even 100% sure we may actually even need more staff time depending on what happens. So if we, and this is if we end up dividing. So if an agreement is not reached, depending on where we go short term, we may actually need more staff hours. So we're not 100% sure what that's going to shake out to look like. So that's why that is staying exactly as it is. Although the one thing I can draw your attention to is the fact that, so in our budget, we take care of all the, the workman's comp and the group life and the PERA, and in addition to the salaries, you'll notice that medical insurance is not on there, and that's because we currently do not have access to medical insurance. We do not have medical insurance. So Emily and myself, our two full-time staff, do not have medical insurance, and I'm not sure how that will be impacted with a change of the agreement. I'm not sure if whose employees we then become, if we are city employees, if I'm not really sure what that looks like. So that's why that's in yellow. 128 is about the minimum, but we're not sure if that will change based on potentially some benefits in the future. So down on the renting and leasing, the $1,200, that is things for like our internet, those are things we don't have control over. Those are things that go up and we don't have any control over that. Plum Creek Automation, that actually, we have no control over. That is based on our service population and our usage. So it's kind of a formula that actually pulls from previous year data, which means that if we divide currently our service population area is the school district, that would not be the case anymore, but it still takes a year for things to catch up. And so, and also, if you notice the year before it, it was $7,500 for that. We have budgeted the $8,500 and are approved. And that is because Plum Creek Automation did go up. So our cost of services went up. But if you note in the divided column, that's $11,500. So that's a significant increase. And that's because currently the school does pay a small portion. They pay a quarter of those automation fees. And we would have to take on the full automation fees for Plum Creek. So that went up. And our ebooks, that again is kind of one of those things that's based on service population, how much money you put into your collection on the previous year. So that won't change. It might change a little bit in the future, but not right away. So really, you can see the biggest impact will be on our books, our audio, so our collection. Last year, we spent $17,000 on books, and that's what we had approved in our budget is another $17,000. And you can see that we had to drop that down to $9,000 to make this budget work. And that is with the 3% with the city and 3% with the county. We still have to cut our collection that significantly. And in a nutshell, it kind of looks really bad right away. But if we're in a tiny interim space, we're not going to have enough room on our shelves to purchase at the level we were purchasing before anyways. So that would go down, just the need to fill that. Our space would limit our ability to purchase. Obviously, we don't want to stay that low for indefinitely, but in an interim, that's kind of what we would be looking at. I think that's roughly, when I first started, roughly they were spending about $9,000 to $10,000 a year on materials. And I think that is the number that will work for us in a smaller space in interim, if that's what we need to do. And with that, our supplies also have gone down. So supplies are 401. That went down from 4,500 to 3,000 because obviously if we're not purchasing as many books, we don't need to process them, so we don't need as many supplies. So that would drop. Our programming also, which is up 305, that also would have to drop down, again, in part just because in a smaller space, we may not have the ability to program as robustly as we have. We still, COVID is still a thing. We still have presenters that don't want to come to our neck of the woods for programming, and we still have people who are reticent about coming out and doing programs, just coming to them. And so, again, that is kind of one of those things that if we have to drop that number for a couple of years, that and there's always grants. We write a lot of grants, and so we can supplement that if need be with grants. So if you notice then at the very bottom is where we've got our county aid to public libraries, and then the community education, that $17,000 is what's missing in there, and that is from community ed, from Pipestone area schools, and that is, quite honestly, they can still provide $17,000 to the public library. I know that other libraries, lots of libraries in our state, our Plum Creek service, receive funding from community ed. So, but I'm walking away with it if we don't receive that $17,000. This is what it looks like. Do you have any questions on that? Yeah.
Do you have any idea if they don't agree to a new contract, what are your alternative location possibilities?
Yes, so we have been concurrent planning, just because that's a huge need. I think You know, I've looked at several places. I think that right now we maybe are looking at a place that's got about 4,000 square feet for us, which is significant. It's less than half of what we have right now. But I'm not, you know, I'm not 100% sure that, you know, where that's at, but I do know that that is one of the places. Another place we looked at was about 2,000 square feet, which is, you know, that's this room, you know, really tiny. And, you know, so there are a couple options, I think, for short term.
Are the costs for those locations included here?
No, and we do, so our library, actually, we have a fund balance of about $80,000 right now. And so we would, if need be, we would have some financial independence, if you will, that it's not a burden, a huge burden on our community to kind of suck up the cost of that. We would be able to, if need be, pay for, you know, depending on what rent would be, you know, maybe a year or two of. So we're trying really hard to not financially strap our community with a decision that, you know, we don't really have a lot of control over, if you will. And so, yeah, so we do have some funds too.
It's not a long-term solution, obviously.
And it's not a long-term solution, right? 4,000 square feet or 2,000 square feet isn't a long-term solution.
No.
And we have been, not only have we been looking at short-term spaces and long-term spaces, we also have implemented a transition plan. The library board sat down at the end of July, and we created a transition plan so that we could get started in doing some of those things that might need to happen before we move, if we have to move. And so we're really trying hard to kind of see what our footprint actually needs to be, because right now, you know, we moved into this space that's, you know, almost 10,000 square feet and shared space. So, you know, we use it kind of fluidly. The school does as well as the public does. And so we're kind of trying to see what our actual footprint of need is. So, yeah.
And I know it's hard to project, but what are any idea of the likelihood that the school will agree to a contract that will work?
So I went to the school board meeting last night, and the city had sent them their proposed agreement, and the school rejected that last night, again citing the need to have that hiring, firing control of staff. And I do have from Myron Coots, the mayor, he said, I have a meeting with the county commissioners on Tuesday, and they're going to want to know some updates. And so he sent me this and said, let him know this. So he said the city and the school district did meet again, and they did meet, I believe, last Thursday. Don't quote me on the Thursday, but I think it was last Thursday. And he said, and the school still wants to structure the agreement, removing the library board from the hiring process in violation of state statutes on a joint library. The city council will be meeting on Monday evening and releasing the official city's position. So I'm hoping that we actually have some resolution and clarification about how we're moving forward sooner rather than later. I do know that Jeff Botson, kind of the feeling of the school board was, well, we can, you know, I'm willing to negotiate until, you know, December 31st. Of which I say that's fantastic that people want to work together that long, but we still need to know what we're doing before that, because if they don't reach an agreement, what happens on January 1st?
Right.
So I'm hoping we at least have a solid answer before that, because we're really already trying to compact a 2-year process into about 4 months. And yeah, and so it's there's a lot of things that happen that we are really working very hard to get into place so that we can even be functional with the least disruption to our community as possible.
Sounds to me like they gave you a solid answer last night.
Well, we will see. We will see. Yes. Yes.
It's unfortunate.
Say the least.
You know, it is, and my job as the public librarian is to provide quality services to all of my patrons, and so I say maybe as unfortunate as this situation is there a silver lining? Is there something that we can take out of this at the end that maybe is actually stronger for our community? I do know that there are negatives to dividing and no longer having that agreement. You know, like I've said from the start, the biggest impact will be on those students. And so long term, when your students suffer, the community as a whole does, right? We are not as strong as we could be if we're not providing across the board as well as we could be. And so our job will be, as a public library, if we do move out of that space, our job will be to figure out how to bring those kids back into the library and to make sure that we're giving them everything that they need. And it's possible that kids don't want to stay for programming out at the school or come back to the school because they've been in school all day long. So maybe having us not on campus will provide an impetus for them to come forward. Another thing that I think is a positive, if you will, is because we are attached to the school and we're very cognizant of school hours and the student use of the library, we don't do programming for the most part during the day. But for people who don't like to drive at night and drive on icy roads in the winter, daytime programming is a fantastic opportunity that we haven't tapped into yet. And so I'm choosing to look at the great things that we can, if we do divide, that we can provide our community moving forward. So I think we can still do fantastic things. So, yeah.
Any other questions for Jody?
I have a couple.
Yes.
Do you have any negative feedback on the content that you're buying?
You know, so that we
reason I ask is that I went to a Zoom on, it was a lady that put it on to the northern suburbs of the cities, and she all of a sudden got ambushed by some people at the
Yes.
board meeting.
I think you and I were on that same
Yeah.
Zoom.
Okay.
So directly, no, we've never had a formal complaint at the library. What we have had is, you know, people will ask a question about, people, or say people shouldn't be reading this, or, I think. And then I simply say, if I took away everything in the library that somebody might find offensive, there would be nothing left in here.
The Bible would be out too.
Exactly. And well, literally everything would, because, everybody comes with different life experiences, different values, and different desires. And so my job as a public librarian, the director, and my staff is to make sure that we are providing information for everybody. And so, no, we haven't. I do think that this is one of the potential silver linings if we do divide, is that schools do not have as much leeway and ability to purchase as freely as what a public library does. So public library, we adhere to the tenet of the ALA, patrons' rights to free and equitable access, regardless of age or any other, gender or religion or whatever.